Caller number one here is Alexander, who's a theist from Texas, pronouns are he, him, who says the evidence for the supernatural is overwhelming. Alexander,
Oh, okay.
like,
Hello? Hello?
welcome, I guess.
Hello.
My take on this is a little different in that there are plenty of claims that people make where they say something unusual has happened and I think it's supernatural. How do you tell the difference between something that is in fact supernatural in origin and something that is not supernatural in origin, but is perceived that way?
Well, I guess some of the clear, no doubt things that you would see would be that you wouldn't have a shadow of a doubt in believing it would be where people would be levitating, crawling up the wall like a spider, which many of these Catholic exorcists have again and again have
Where's
mentioned.
so first of all, in like, for example, a Catholic exorcism, I'm not aware that I've
Mhm.
seen evidence of actual levitating, but even if all of us witnessed what appeared to be a levitation, how would we confirm that the cause of that is supernatural at all?
Well, you would have to imply all materialistic procedurements to test that out, right? Anything,
Well, what I'm
anything,
saying is,
everything.
as far as I can tell, in the history of the world, there's been no demonstration that anything supernatural is possible as a cause for an observed phenomenon or has been confirmed as a cause. And so if you witnessed levitation, what would be the test that you do to show that it's supernatural in origin?
Well, I think I answered that in my statement before that.
So when I clarify that you didn't in fact give a satisfactory answer, and I give you another opportunity to answer it, you're just not going to try. You're just going to say you already answered that.
Okay, well, you justify by testing, right? If it's either supernatural or not.
Okay.
Where
So,
there
so
would,
Okay.
Alexander, the problem is I'm asking, how do you test whether it's supernatural or not?
you test by, okay. So in other words, right, you're like, how do you know if it's supernatural, or how can you know if it's supernatural, right?
He
So
said, "How
I'm
do
a
you
How do you test?
test
magician.
it?" Yeah.
I'm a magician.
Mm-hmm.
I can do some things
Mhm.
that some people would look at and say, oh, that's supernatural. They're not, but some people might think that. Similarly, let's say we had an observed phenomenon, like you and I stood in that room and we watched somebody levitate. My answer looking at it would be, I don't know what caused that. And if you're saying that is supernatural in origin, I want to know what test you did or could do to confirm that it was supernatural in origin.
Well, I think that's a contradiction because isn't it possible to do tests on the supernatural since the supernatural is away from the material to do tests on?
So you
Well,
just
you're the one
asserted that
making the claim.
you
Sorry, go
just
ahead, Matt.
Yeah,
asserted
no.
you just asserted that my question is contradictory, which is
Yeah,
absolutely
no, no, no. I
absurd.
understand that. I
No,
understand that.
no, stop
It's because with
interrupting
the
me while
magician,
stop interrupting me. This
I'm
is not going to go well for you, Alexander, if you keep interrupting me. You just
go on.
asserted that I contradicted myself or stated something that was contradictory. And then you went on to say that the supernatural can't be tested, which means that you're the one in a contradictory position because you're suggesting that you would determine that something is caused by the supernatural by testing.
Mhm.
And then you just asserted that you can't test for the supernatural. So which is it?
Okay. Well, I think we can both agree on, right, that on, like you said as an analogy, right, the magicians, right, how do how can you test the magician if a magician did a real thing or not? I think that we can test on the magician's part. We can actually test, right, if it's real or not. But if you can imply a test like the magicians on a supernatural thing that you cannot have an answer for, but it still
No, no, no,
happened,
no, no.
I
So
think,
first of all, you don't get to call it a supernatural thing. That's the thing you're trying to prove. So there's some event and it either had a supernatural explanation or cause or it did not. You don't get to call it a supernatural event until you confirm the cause. What is the test that you
okay.
do on the levitating person to show that it's supernatural in origin?
I'm gonna be honest here, Matt. You can't do no test.
Okay. So by your own admission, there cannot possibly be confirmed evidence of the supernatural. Thank you for calling.
Okay, but hang on.
Why would Alexander, I'll hang on. But first I'd like you to answer, why should I hang on? Because you called in to say the evidence for the supernatural is overwhelming. And now you're saying you can't test for the supernatural, which means not only is the evidence not overwhelming, it's non-existent. So why should I continue to discuss this with you?
Okay. And I really, really respectfully would like to ask you this, right? If in fact you would like to add, if you would like for me to provide I don't know about like what kind of test, like empirical test. Give me, what do you mean?
I asked you, and you just told me that it can't be tested. So why would I then give you criteria to test what you just told me can't be tested? Meanwhile, the question I asked was, why should I continue to discuss this with you when your case has just been defeated?
Okay, well, I believe that a very, very piece.
What you believe is irrelevant. I'd like you to answer my question. Why should I continue to discuss this with you when the case you made has just been defeated?
How has it been defeated?
You asserted.
You just said that there is no way to test it. There is no way. You defeated your own argument, sir.
Yeah.
There is the way that you can test it, but not on the test of materialism.
You just said that there wasn't a way to test it, and now you're saying there is. Why on earth should I continue a conversation with someone who repeatedly contradicts themselves?
You can let me just rewrap, let me reframe, let me actually give you a test that I think it's reasonable to include to verify if it's supernatural or not, okay?
Give me a test.
If I can put every single test that I can make, right, in a materialistic way around the case of scenario of that would happen, and if the person still levitates and crawls up the wall and speaks in Latin where they have no previous historical knowledge of perfect Latin or ancient Koine Greek, and speaks names thereof that has no relative information between people and references and whatever, and they're still able to do that, I believe that is a very strong indication that is a supernatural, because you have person information.
What would that test be? You're saying that there's overwhelming evidence. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, man.
Right.
All you did was just say, if you can do every test for a material cause and they fail to show a material cause for someone levitating, walking up the wall, speaking Latin, and saying names that I don't think they could have known, then if the tests that you do fail, it's reasonable to conclude that it's supernatural. No, sir, that's a fallacy. You are wrong.
Okay. Could I respectfully ask you, right, in a free thinking and in a discussion, right, sense, could you provide a sort of advice or not advice, example for me to say, like, what would you expect, or what would you include? What would
No, Alexander, here's the problem. This is what I'm trying. Stop fucking talking. Stop talking and listen. Stop fucking talking and listen, and you'll learn.
Matt Dillahunty versus Jay Dyer, transcendental argument absolutely gets blown out of the water.
Okay, I'm going to mute you disgusting little prick, and then I'm going to school you and make you my bitch. Okay, so listen up, Alexander, my cute little bitch. Here's the problem with assertions about the supernatural. By your own admission and acknowledgement, the one thing that you got right is that we don't know of any way to test that something is supernatural in origin. As Arthur C. Clarke pointed out, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Basically, there reaches a point where our knowledge level is not sufficient to say X is supernatural. The fallacy that you tried to use of saying, oh, if we observed something and we tested it and we could not come up with a material definition or a material explanation, then it would be reasonable for us to conclude that the explanation is supernatural. That is a fallacy. You do not get to conclude that something is supernatural just because you have failed to come up with a natural explanation, because You don't know everything about natural explanations and potential natural explanations. So when you want me to try to give you an example of what would prove it to me, you are shifting the burden of proof, and you are misunderstanding the entirety of how to make a case for something. I don't know how you would prove the supernatural. I'm not convinced that it's possible to prove the supernatural. But that's not my problem, and it's not a problem with my epistemology. It's a problem for you because you think there is something supernatural. You think you can reasonably conclude there's something natural, and yet when presented with multiple opportunities to actually do that, you absolutely failed, admitted you couldn't, then tried to backpedal to suggest that maybe you can, then tried to pretend that it was somehow my problem for not giving you the test criteria for the bullshit you're spewing. Instead, Alexander, it would be better for you to say, I witnessed someone levitating, climbing up a wall, speaking in Latin that I don't think they knew before, and mentioning names that I don't think I knew before. And I don't know how that happened. I would at least agree with you. I don't know how it happened either. But you know what's even worse than that? I don't know that it did happen. I've seen no example and no evidence that confirms someone levitating, walking up a wall. I've seen videos. I've seen the Exorcist movie. I've seen fraudulent things. I've seen things that we can't confirm even happened. And you seem to take testimonial accounts of someone witnessing an exorcism and reporting on it. And you not only assume that they are accurately reporting what they saw, but that they are accurately reporting the cause for what they saw. I don't accept either. And that's not a problem with my position. It's a problem with yours. If you want to say that something happened, you have to be able to demonstrate it. And if you can't come up with it, and you sit here and contradict yourself repeatedly, then maybe what you should do is reach out to God and ask God what you should say next. Because right now you are an embarrassingly bad representative of God and of epistemology on confirming the supernatural. Would you like to try and actually have a reasonable discussion, or you just want to show that you are another Jay Dyer stooge to come in and pretend that there's some evidence that supports the supernatural and then have to acknowledge that there's not? Which is it?
All right. Well, first of all, let me just come in straight and let me prove to you how God is on my side, because I have no experience to debates and whatever. But I do believe that I just caught on you making a absolute fallacy on the sense that you said, how about you try to call your God for trying not to make yourself embarrassment? I believe that has been on every single person, right, that has a absolute good argument, solid argument, and people would still be like, oh, why didn't you call on your God and, not make yourself an embarrassment? So thank you for just self-refuting yourself on your channel, Matt. Anyway.
I didn't refute myself at all, Alexander, but I'm going to put you on mute so that I can address this again. You just accused me of making a fallacy. Please identify what I said that was fallacious and what fallacy it is. If you can identify what I said that was fallacious and what the fallacy is, I'll give you $100 right now.
All right. Well, I better expect those $100, because if you make a statement and you make a statement.
What's the statement? What was the statement and what was the fallacy? That's it. That's the only thing before you. The only sentences that need to come out of your mouth is what statement did I make and what was the fallacy? And if you can do that, you get $100.
Okay. You said, I'd advise for you to call on your God so that you cannot make yourself a fool, so that you can know what to say, for him to tell you what to say, so that you won't make yourself a fool. Okay?
Yes. What's the fallacy?
Fallacy is that you just made a truth claim about something that has literally been said or by Christians, right, that have an absolute good argument, right, on the good line, and people will still say it's a bad argument. And the same
I'm sorry.
thing that you have said
What's
to me.
the fallacy? Because first of all, what I did say wasn't an argument, which means it can't be fallacious. The second thing is that what you're asserting is that I made a truth claim, which isn't true, and you have not identified the fallacy. You are in over your head, bitch. You are not ready for this. The point that I was making is that if in fact your God exists and wants you to interact with me, then that God should tell you, could tell you, not necessarily should, but could tell you exactly what you need to say so that you are not contradicting yourself repeatedly. Sorry, what?
Right. And I'm sorry, and Alex, you should not be asking Matt that. The point is that if you have all of this evidence for the supernatural existing, you wouldn't have to ask Matt these questions.
Yeah. Fallacies apply to arguments, not my suggestion that you should ask God. But the problem is that in no way was I making an argument that said, you need to ask your God this, or blah, 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 therefore, blah, blah, blah. There wasn't an argument made, which means there isn't a fallacy made. But also, you just came back with the assertion that Christians presented good arguments and could be dismissed that way. Well, yes, that could be the case. But here's what can't happen. And so I'll ask you a couple simple questions. Does the God you believe in know everything that's ever happened and ever will happen?
Yes.
Okay. Does the God you believe in want me to believe in him?
Yes.
Does the God that you believe in want you to try to convince me that he exists?
Yes.
Does the God that you believe in communicate with you in a way that you can understand?
Yes.
Did you ask God what you should say before you called in?
No.
Why not?
I believe you're making questions that are
Alexander,
okay. First of all,
why didn't you ask God what you should say before you called in?
because it was out of my own will and my own rational thinking of desire to call you about.
But you think God wants you to convince me that he's real. So why wouldn't you ask? Why don't you go ask God what you should say next time? And then we can even schedule it. Like you could apply to be on End Boss and you could go off and pray and ask God what you should say. And does your God know exactly what would change my mind?
Matt, can you promise not to?
Does your God know exactly what would change my mind?
Yes, but he has a will not to tell me. I mean,
no, Alexander, you don't get to make shit up. I'm asking very simple questions. So your God knows exactly what would change my mind. You believe your God knows exactly what would change my mind. You believe your God wants you to change my mind. And instead of asking God what you should say to change my mind, you just decide to go it on your own, despite the fact that you are completely unequipped for this conversation. That seems not very bright. So why don't you go ask God what you should say?
I don't think it's right for you to.
I'm sorry, but I was still talking, so I'm going to mute you again. I'm going to let you go here in a minute. And you should go ask your God what you should say next time. And then you can call me back and say, God told me to say this. And then we'll be able to find out whether or not your God was right about what would change my mind, right?
Matt, Jesus incarnate could not even.
That was a question. That was a question, right?
Yes, but it's more of the heart issue, Matt.
It's no, sir. I'm sorry, but Alexander, you might just be a little too dumb for this. But if your God knows exactly what would change my mind, and you ask God, what should you say? Then the heart thing is irrelevant because your God will tell you exactly what you should say to change my mind, right?
You mean how Jay Dyer was more bright than you that you couldn't understand?
Oh, you know what? Why don't you go cut to Jay just a little bit more, since you've demonstrated that you can't. Then you can't have it. You can't have an argument. You don't understand fallacies. You don't know what you're doing, and you are now dishonest because you think you know better about how to interact with me than your God does.
Man.
I'm an
You admitted
ignorant
that you're a
fool.
fool.
Really? I'm an ignorant
Yeah,
fool?
you said that. You said that on his video. He absolutely destroyed you.
Cool.
What?
And what does
What
that
does that
make
have to do with
you?
this
What does that make
conversation
you,
now?
Alexander?
Jeez.
What does it make you when I've given you every opportunity to even go take time off and ask your God a question? The truth is, you're a liar.
Because if you
You
can't
know
do
that
that on Jay Dyer's
you're
video,
God. I'm going to mute you. I'm going to mute you, and I'm never going to unmute you. You're just going to sit there and listen to me until I hang up on you and go to another caller, because you're a liar, Alexander. If in fact you believed that there was a God who could and would tell you exactly what you should say to change my mind, you would ask that God. Otherwise, you are putting yourself ahead of God. You are putting your own will and your desire ahead of God, which is what you did when you called in today and made an embarrassing representation. You are one of the worst representatives of the God that you believe in that I've ever interacted with, because given multiple opportunities to make a case, all you did was repeatedly contradict yourself and show that you like to suck up to Jay Dyer. Well, congratulations. You guys can blow each other all you want. I'm still sitting here saying there is no evidence for the supernatural, and you agreed. I'm saying I'm not aware of any test that could demonstrate that the supernatural exists, and you agreed. What's more is you went a step further and said there cannot be a test for the supernatural, and then you tried to contradict yourself later. You are in way over your head, and I bid you good evening. Tell Jay, if you can talk around his cock, I said hi.
Hey, it's Jimmy Snow here. I'm the executive producer on the line with a fun fact. Did you know 100% of the hosts of this channel enjoy eating? It's true. And if you would like to help contribute to their ongoing addiction, you can do so by going over to Patreon or becoming a channel member. There are show-specific, host-specific tiers. Those are awesome. But also, you can leave a super thanks with a special little highlighted comment. You can like, comment, and subscribe. All of those will help fill our whittle bellies. By the way, check out some of this content over here. Algorithm, what next?